Hi guys, I hope you're all okay. This week we're going to get back into the Bible. Today I want us to think about Joshua. It's still in the Old Testament, Joshua chapter 6. So what's happened up to now? Well, with God's guidance, Moses has managed to help the people of Israel to escape from slavery in the country of Egypt. And for the last 40 years, the people of Israel and Moses have been wandering around in the desert, living in tents, waiting for the time when they can enter the land that God has promised them. So Moses is no longer the leader of the Israeli people. Now Joshua has taken over, and Joshua has just brought the whole nation, got them prepared and ready to enter into this promised land that they've been waiting for. They walked across a wide river, and now they're ready to enter that land and take it over. Joshua and his people enter this promised land. The first city they come across is a gateway city called Jericho. And Joshua knows that he needs to completely destroy the people that are living in this city, because God has promised that this land is not for the people that live there, it's for Joshua and his people. And as Joshua is coming closer to this city, he comes across a man brandishing a sword, and Joshua walks up to him and says, are you for us? Are you on our side, or are you on the side of our enemy? And this man says, I'm not on anybody's side. I'm the commander-in-chief of the Lord's army. And straight away Joshua realizes that he's speaking to God, and he just falls down on the floor and is ready to listen to whatever God has to tell him about what's coming up. So you should know that the people of Israel were a very, very large group of people. So the people in the city of Jericho definitely would have noticed that the people of Israel were on their way. And Jericho was in fact a very well protected city. It was an ancient city with a huge wall around the outside. And this city would have been built thousands of years before even Joshua was born. Now, when the people of Jericho heard about the people of Israel coming, they realised that they were going to need to protect themselves. So normally the people in Jericho would go in and out of the city through gates in the wall. But when they heard that the people of Israel were coming, what they did is they very quickly closed up the wall around the city and closed all the gates where you could come in and out. So if you have a look here, what I've done is I've used some paper cups to try to imagine what it would have been like to be inside that city of Jericho. And as you can see, look, with all the gates shut up, this is a very wide and very tall wall. And the people of Jericho all stayed inside and thought that they could keep themselves safe. So God gave Joshua some very clear instructions about how he was to overcome this city. He told Joshua, what I want you to do is I want you to take the Ark of the Covenant. This was a kind of a box that the people of Israel carried that had the actual presence of God inside of it. And he told his religious people, the priests, to carry the Ark of the Covenant along with the army who were armed and were going to protect the people, to walk around the outside, all the way around the outside of the wall of the city. And as they were going, they were to blow on horns, but the people were not to make any noise. And God told Joshua, I want you to repeat this same thing. I want you to walk with the Ark of the Covenant, with the presence of God leading your way all the way around the outside of this city, and do the same thing again and again for 6 days. And God told Joshua, he said, on the 7th day, what I want you to do is I want you to do the same thing again. I want you to take the Ark of the Covenant carried by the priests, holding their horns. I want the army to move with them, and I want your people to move around the city. But on the 7th day, instead of going around once, this time I want you to go 7 times. And all this time, I want your people to be quiet. Except for the horns, there's not going to be the noise of people shouting. And what I want you to do is wait, and on the 7th time, on the seventh day, as you move around this city, I want your people to wait for a long sound on the horn that the priests are going to make. And when they make that long sound, I want all of your people to shout and cheer in victory, because I promise you the victory is always already yours. And when your people shout with joy and in victory after that seventh lap around the city, do you know what's going to happen? The walls surrounding that city are going to just fall down into pieces, and your men and your people will be able to enter the city and to take control of it. So what I was hoping that you could do this week is to find something with which you can make your own Wall of Jericho, and then you can play out the scene yourselves. I've done it on the table, but you might want to do it on the floor, and I wonder if you can persuade anybody in your house to buy you lots and lots of paper cups. If you can't, then you're going to have to find something else to build your wall with. Maybe you could use some boxes, some small boxes, or you could find some bricks, maybe some toys, not bricks for building real houses, or maybe some Lego. So let's imagine that you were Joshua and that you knew that you needed to get into this city so that you could take control of it. And imagine that you hadn't heard anything from God and you had to come and think of your own idea about how to get into this city. Well, the way I see it, there's a few different things we could do. We could maybe dig under the ground and get under the wall to get into the city, or maybe you could climb the walls of the city and somehow get in that way. Maybe you could get some weapons and smash your way through the wall, or possibly you could trick the people of Jericho to open the doors and let you in. But I tell you, by myself, one thing I definitely wouldn't think of is, I know what we're going to do is walk around the city walls, and then the wall's going to fall down so that we can get in. This was really a God idea. This is not the kind of idea that I would come up with by myself. And so what did Joshua do? Did he come up with his own idea, or did he follow God's instructions? I bet you can guess. He didn't lean on his own understanding. Joshua obeyed God and followed his instructions very, very carefully. Now, what were those instructions? He was told to ask his priests to carry the Ark of the Covenant that carried the very presence of God, and to have that leading his people in front of them as they marched around the outside of the city with the army. And they did the same thing for 6 days. Once a day, they'd get up early in the morning and walk around the city. And then on the 7th day, they did something different, because God had told them, on the 7th day, I want you to carry the Ark of the Covenant, carrying the presence of God with your priests and your army and your people, to walk around Jericho city 7 times. And at the end of those 7 times that you've been around, I want the priests to blow very long tone on their horns, so that people will hear it, and when they hear those horns blasting, they are to shout and to cheer. And at that moment, what's going to happen? He'd already told Joshua that the city walls would come down, so Joshua followed those instructions carefully. After the 7th loop, the people heard the horns, they started cheering, and they must have been so excited, but I don't know if they really, all of them, would have had the faith to really believe that this was going to be something that was going to allow them to take the city. But Joshua knew that when they cheered loudly, that all of these were crashing down, and the people of Israel were just able to rush into the city and take control. So that's an amazing story, isn't it, of what God can do. And I had a lot of fun building my Wall of Jericho. So I hope that you're going to find this just as much fun as I did. But there's a lesson here. What can we learn? As well as learning about all the mighty, amazing, wonderful things that God has done for his people in the past, we also need to think about what God does for us today, and what God wants from us. Now, Joshua listened carefully to God, and he followed God's instructions perfectly, and he was able to get what he needed for his people. Now, those instructions might have looked a bit strange to some people. You know, when you're coming up against a city as a leader of an army, it might seem strange to have the instructions to walk around the city. Other people would probably have different ideas. And sometimes when we hear the instructions from God, God tells us what he wants from us. He tells us clearly, actually, in his Bible. He tells us what he wants from us, but sometimes it's difficult to be obedient. It's difficult to do what God wants because sometimes what God wants doesn't seem to make sense. So I have a challenge for you all this week. One of the things that God asks us to do is to not repay evil with more evil. So for example, if somebody insults us or says something mean to us or does something that we don't like, God wants us to not do the same thing back. God says it's not okay for us to say, oh, well, he did it first, or he called me some nasty names, so that makes all the bad things that I do okay. So this week, my challenge to you is, it's not easy, but can you do that? Can you resist when somebody does something that really annoys you and you feel like they deserve to get something bad back again? Are you able to control yourself? And remember, I know it seems strange, but God asks us not to do anything back. Let's see if you can do that this week. Please let me know if you manage to control yourself and maybe don't get back at your brother or sister when they do something mean to you.